this object was getting closer. There was a little morning fog. It was lifting. The object got very close, and I started to ignore it. I felt uncomfortable, so I started watching my cartoon, and then every few minutes I'd turn around and be a bit closer, you know. And eventually, it was clear as day. It was a perfect sphere, silver. It was 100 meters off the water, about 300 to 400 meters out from me, so very, very close. So this is Powell River. We are about 75 miles north of Vancouver. We're literally the end of the road. It's Highway 101. It goes from the tip of South America to here. And so we're about 45 kilometers due east of the city of Comox on Vancouver Island. And we're about 235 kilometers north of Victoria. I know that we have a mystery that my father was a bush pilot and later a commercial pilot, and he's seen one. And that sparked an idea. He didn't know what he saw, but he was mystified. And I didn't know about that until after I had seen something myself, and not far from here, very, very close. Yeah, I just find the subject deeply fascinating, and I think that with all we know about the universe now and the amount of stars and actually what we learned from that is how little we do know. We know nothing, right? And so we know numbers, and there are the likelihood that there is no intelligent life out there is zero. The question is it coming here? And if it's not coming here, then what is this phenomenon? Because it still exists regardless, right? It can't all be chalked up to secret military programs. Otherwise, somebody 80 years ago was flying these things around when the propeller was still a new idea, right? That doesn't seem to match up with our consensus reality now, does it?
It's all nature. Nobody's actually walked down here except for the man that knows the owner of the property for over 10 years, plus years. So there's virtually very little to zero humans that have been walking this whole area of many thousands of acres. So if we're going to see anything from anything anomalous in the sky to anything maybe potentially anomalous in the forest, which would be very interesting, from orbs to, who knows, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. I know they're around. People have heard about them in this location and even further north. So I'm open to anything right now, and I think we're in a really perfect spot for it.
I'll just tell you the truth. So, all right, so basically I'm 10 years old, 1984. I'm about 20 kilometers south of here. And I got up in the morning, as kids do, to watch Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. And I felt, like sometimes the moon is coming out or whatever, and you just get this feeling that you want to turn around. So I did. I turned around and I saw what I thought was a planet or the moon. It was quite a distance away, and it didn't seem like anything special initially. But keep in mind, at that point in my life, I didn't even know the phrase UFO. I had never heard of this stuff. There was no internet. We didn't have cable. We were living out in the woods with rabbit ears on our TV, right? So Wile E. Coyote once a week. But anyhow, this object was getting closer. There was a little morning fog. It was lifting. The object got very close, and I started to ignore it. I felt uncomfortable, so I started watching my cartoon, and then every few minutes I'd turn around and be a bit closer, And eventually, it was clear as day. It was a perfect sphere, silver. It was 100 meters off the water, about 300 to 400 meters out from me, so very, very close. It was in diameter. It was about it was probably 200 meters in diameter. It was a large object. And so I didn't call anybody. I didn't wake my father up, who was sleeping 6 feet away just behind his bedroom door. And of course, he being a pilot would have loved to get up and see this thing. And I just didn't tell anybody. However, in subsequent years now, like well over 30 years, I've tried. I've talked to every kind of scientist I could find to figure out, was that an atmospheric phenomena of some kind of craft. I spent 25 years in the Army and the Air Force, actually served on multiple missions overseas, and I have never seen anything that can explain that, whether it be manufactured or natural. I've seen nothing. So that for me became the impetus to a small interest, but it was years later, because at that time I just thought neat planet thing, and it was, God, it must have been 10, 15 years later when I discovered UFOs, when somebody finally brought that up and said, well, maybe you saw a UFO. And by that point, of course, I had heard of them, but my initial reaction was, there's no way, that's all BS. It becomes pretty apparent that it was, in fact, unidentified. It seemed to be flying, and it was clearly an object. So there it is. That's my story, and I don't know to this day what to say, other than my mind is definitely open, because I would like to know what that was. I think it's important, and I think that if I can quote someone here, a very deeply respected scientist named James E. McDonald, he wrote a paper back in the 50s or 60s, and the name of his paper was Science in Default. And he was referring to science, the science position, the mainstream science position on UFOs has a default setting, which is, it's all BS. I think science remains in default for the most part. However, it's clear now that more and more scientists are starting to look at this and say, hey, wait a minute, we don't know the answers, let's investigate. And that's precisely what science is supposed to do. So that's what brings me here today, is to have these discussions with people and just hear other people's experiences and try to hypothesize and maybe even come up with theories a little bit, and just share that discussion of the phenomena.